Hello and welcome to Console Shock, retro and modern gaming chat with me, Trev, and as usual, Stu. How's it going, Stu?
Hi, Trev. Yeah, going really well, mate. Going really well.
Good.
Going well.
Any fun game stuff on your side to report?
No, well, oh God, I've become obsessed with Call of Duty. It's come on Game Pass. I'm just sitting here playing like every night. I'll do like an hour and a half of Call of Duty like a teenager. You know, put my headset on and just shout at random people.
The online
multiplayer. Yeah.
Oh,
multiplayer.
Wow. Yeah, it's never really I'm not really into multiplayer. I never really have been. And obviously, Call of Duty is. Well, I've played the single player campaigns. I think a while ago I mentioned that I had a little run where I was like, right, I'm going to sit down and play all the single player campaigns, and I managed to do 5 or 6 of them. And I just got kind of bored and stopped. I haven't tried to do it again since to do the ones that I haven't got around to. But yeah, it's never really been of interest to me. I dabbled with it a little bit in the very, very early years of like console multiplayer, online multiplayer. I mean, I remember playing Choo Choo Rocket on the Dreamcast online, which was actually a lot of fun. It's kind of a good for the limitations of online gaming in those days. It was actually well suited to it. I think I might have even tried like Quake 3 Arena on the Dreamcast in those days, and 1 or 2 other games that were online for us in the UK. We had a bit more of a limited, amount that we could play on the Dreamcast in those days. But yeah, I did do it then. I think I probably I never had original Xbox Live. I never got that because it didn't start till like 2004 for us. I think it was very, very late in the original Xbox's life. The 360 was out like not long after.
I mean, for me, online gaming is something that I've always sort of had the opinion that I'm not going to be good at it. So it's I enjoy the process, and then people quite often on Call of Duty I kill as many people as I'm killed or whatever. And then it's quite funny really. I sort of just enjoy sort of the process of playing it. I don't really mind if I don't win and I think I know I'll never be great at it. So. I do. Credit. Well, I do like to come, obviously, in the top half and of the little table at the end, and I get a bit of pleasure from that. But then, sometimes you go into games and go, "Oh, I'm doing really well," and you go into the next game, and for some reason, it's put you up against some sort of ninja from sort of Korea who's jumping all over a shop and laying down and running up behind you and stabbing you before you've even noticed them. And sometimes that can get a little bit sort of frustrating, but then it seems to be quite good that the X or the PC will then realise you're not particularly good, and it'll put you back with players of your level. So I kind of I enjoy.
There's always a bigger fish, basically, with that. Which is, some people like that, and other people I would just get frustrated. And I don't like. I mean, I think we've maybe once or twice, me and you have played online. I think we've played FIFA, where we both. I think we played on the same team against someone else. I think
we played against each other, but I think the issue is with FIFA. I think you've played so much of it, and I have played quite a lot. but I think you're just sort of so much better. So it will almost be a bit frustrating for you, and
it's kind of you to say, but I wouldn't know
for me as well.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be able to say where I rank. I would probably be decent, like you say, because I've played it for so long. But I've seen like videos of kids playing it online, and they're just doing all the tricks, all the jinks, and the step overs and spin moves. And I mean, that's not really like real football to me. It's like if you put like FIFA on the maximum difficulty, which is legendary, which I do occasionally if I get really bored. It's insane. Like I've done it in the career mode, and I'm playing against teams, and again they're doing step overs and jinks and funny little tricks, and I'm like, well, it's kind of nice to look at, but I'm playing Rochdale, who wouldn't be doing this in real life.
Yeah,
they wouldn't be playing like an entire team of.
I'm Real Madrid playing Rochdale, and they're beating me 7-0.
And their players are doing step overs and jinks and flick ups and everything. Yeah, it's just kind of a ridiculous. Like obviously those moves look great in like the trailer, because in like the FIFA trailer, it's like doing amazing bicycle kicks and diving headers, and which is like happens 0.01 times in over the course of a season in football. Like we go and watch a lot of football together. I obviously watch a lot of football. You're lucky if, as a Charlton fan, we have a goal that's bundled in off someone's arse cheek. So yeah.
Yeah, but it's quite funny. They should, I think, a good idea for a YouTube video. Someone's probably done this. Is going, okay, right? This weekend, Arsenal's playing Man City, and then let's have a look at that game, and then let's see how someone playing FIFA, two competent players against each other, how different they sort of play against each other, and comparing what the game is like to, because I think and I don't know this, but from your experience, do people how different is playing FIFA to playing or actually the real game? Is it faster? Is there more through balls?
Oh yeah, I mean,
do people try and dribble it from the one end of the pitch to the other and then score?
I mean,
it's
it's a lot
different, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes a player, a few seconds to pick up the ball in defence and then make a run down the wing to put a cross in, where it would take probably 2 or 3 times that in real life. And it has to be. It's basically obviously it's very time compressed. I mean, you can have a 90-minute game that literally lasts 90 minutes. But the
score would be something like
ridiculous,
like 24 to
41 or something,
30, or something. I remember I watched or it came up on a video I watched ages and ages ago, that in American football, the NFL, one of the players got the ball, and then instead of running over the line to get a touchdown, he was aware of the time. So he did the same sort of move that he would have done when he plays Madden. So he got the ball and sort of run round in circles, but didn't cross the line because he wanted to, take down the clock, run the clock down. And it was like, well, people don't do that in the NFL. They do it all the time in Madden. That's if you're good enough and there's a space around you, I suppose you would do that. And I just thought that was that's the video game influencing real football.
Yeah. I mean, it does those sort of things up. I remember when one of the Super Bowls, I remember a team was ahead, barely ahead, and they actually had an opportunity to score another touchdown. It was right near the end of the game. And they actually chose the guy was like completely open, and he was would have been able to run straight to the house, as they say, but he actually didn't. He stopped short of the end zone because it would mean it would be another play that would run another 30 seconds down. Because if he scored the touchdown, the clock would stop, and the other team would get the ball back and have an opportunity to use that time to potentially get back in the game. So they tried to sort of basically run the clock down and not score, which is an interesting. I mean, I guess there's a kind of a form of that in soccer, because you could have a really good run down the wing and you're maybe 1-0 up and it's 96th minute, you're like, well, I could put a cross in here and someone might get on the end of it and score, or I could just try and keep it in the corner and run the clock down, So yeah, there's kind of an element of that. It's hard to do that in video games. Well, people could just pass it along their defenders, I guess, which some people do, which is kind of a form of griefing, in like a sports game. But
that's what happens. That's what happens in a real game, though, isn't it? It's what you just said. You run to the corner and then try and hold the ball there and keep it up the other end, and you see that all the time, and that's how real football happens. And I've tried to sort of hold on to a lead and hold the ball in a certain position and not try and go forward, and then usually it might go a little bit wrong, but
I mean, there are similar things you can do in the game versus real life, but to sort of bring about how we sort of kicked it off. Never really been into online gaming. I mean, I do like some of these sort of niche sort of Nintendo Switch stuff that have come out, like Super Mario 35 was a lot of fun. I played that a lot. Pac-Man 99, those kind of battle royale editions of old games I really enjoy. So those I've played, but there's not really many of those. And Nintendo tend to have them available for a bit and then they take them down. So they're not sort of ongoing things. Even Pac-Man 99, I think, is gone now. Tetris 99 might still be around, though.
Do you enjoy not competitive, cooperative games? So would you like to do something like play zombies or do like Call of Duty? Player, like Gears of War, you can kind of do a cooperative campaign, can't you? And actually just go through the single player mode. I mean that I'd probably like. I remember back this would have been in like my sort of early 20s when I used to go and hang around a mate's house that lived down the road from me. We used to like play Pro Evo, but we'd actually do a thing where we'd come up with a little task for us to do. We'd be like, right, instead of playing each other, we'd be like, okay, let's try and win the World Cup as like, I don't know, Greece or something like, or San Marino or something Monaco.
Like that, or Jamaica. Yeah. And we'd we'd obviously play on the same team, which has its own sort of nuances versus you just playing on your own. And you have to sort of, tell each other, "Oh, pass it to me. I'm free," or don't tackle that guy. Do this instead, or I'll go and stop this guy. So it was a really interesting dynamic you had to have. And obviously it'd be quite a hard task already because you're kind of playing as a crap team and you're going to be playing good teams. And that would be a whole evening. You could spend doing that if you managed to get through the games, and you could spend 4 or 5 hours doing that. So that's basically cooperative multiplayer, and that was quite enjoyable. And you can still do that now. I don't know if you can do it on the online way of playing, but and things like Mario Kart I've played online.
I've played a bit of Mario Kart online. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of probably it's a bit unbalanced, and you could be at the front for ages, and then you'll get hit with a blue shell, and you lose the whole thing. And you can so I'm not sure how much a skill is a factor in that game. It seems to be kind of potluck, and it sort of favors people at the back, getting the best weapon, just like it does in single player mode. So that's kind of, not quite the same. I mean, you can have online stuff that's just UV the environment, like Elite Dangerous. You're still online, but you're not really fighting real people. You're just fighting the AI. And maybe in some ways the AI is harder than a real person could be, So, but it's interesting that you're doing that. Are you enjoying it then?
I am actually, yeah. And something sort of funny came up was, I think one of the other things that it used to be, I was sort of commenting to a guy at work. I said, "Oh, I remember I used to do online on my Xbox. People are constantly talking, and you'll get into conversations with people. And now there's none of that, except every now and again you'll hear someone talking, and you're not hearing the other side of the conversation. And it's like, okay, that's a little bit odd. But there were, I thought this was quite funny. But in the new Black Ops, they've got this feature where you can use someone as like a shield, so you can go up behind someone and grab them and hold them as a shield, and then when those you grab the other player and you're holding them, you can actually talk to each other. So you can use someone as a shield to obviously protect yourself, and then you can talk to them at the same time. And I think that's quite weird.
That is a bit strange, yeah.
That is a little bit odd.
Yeah, it seems like people like doing that, I guess. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a thing that wouldn't still be there.
Yeah. So I think that's that could be some sort of, I don't know. Like I'm thinking about sort of online bullying and I don't know, weird things like that. Where you
kind
know,
of encouraging it, or like if you sort of making
if you know. I don't know. I'm trying to sort of, someone's a miner or something on the other side, and then you can grab them, and it just seems all a little bit. Oh, that's a little bit odd. I don't think it'll. Maybe it might not get into the final build of the game, or you might have to, you know, press a button if you want to action that. Yeah,
that's interesting. Interesting development in the world of multiplayer there, I would say. So what we're going to look at in more depth now, we both will listen to DF Direct, don't you, Stu?
Oh, big fan of it. Yeah, big fan.
Big fan. Is that every week then you put it on?
Yeah, it always comes out on a Monday, and it's generally it's a good podcast, and I mean some of it does get. I don't want this to become a critique of DF Retro, but when they sort of start talking about, I don't know, frame rates,
the latest graphics card or the Intel i9 6500K,
or if you put this setting on and you put that setting on, and it just goes into abbreviation city.
Yeah,
as I sort of call it, you're like, oh, hold on.
DLSS and FSR, and it goes.
Yeah,
nuts.
and you sort of know what they mean, but you know, I have to admit, I'm not sitting in that world all the time to really understand quite the nuances of what they're saying. But I do enjoy the podcast, and I might skip through some of the bits on.
Same here, yeah. I mean, it's a solid 2 hours, and that's quite long for me, especially for a podcast. I like them to sort of be about an hour long.
I think the best things about the DF Retro podcast are the questions at the end. Because
same here, yeah.
All of and it's the names of people, and then when Richard Ledbetter reads them out, I'm like, we've got a question from Alien Hominid, or he says something like, I don't really know what that means, but anyway, it's a good question, and you're just like, it's just quite funny.
Yeah, he's funny. He's got kind of a dad quality to him, where he doesn't quite get some of these internet slang and in jokes and stuff, and he's quite a well-spoken chap, and he's like, you know, a very charming way he sort of actually points out the punctuation in like the questions, like, you know, and so said, exclamation point, you know, and all that stuff. And obviously him saying bespoke all the time, and, you know, in the here and now, and, you know, and all that stuff. But obviously, you know, he's someone that we both grew up with the magazines that he worked in, you know. I showed my girlfriend a copy. I mean, she sometimes, you know, I sometimes have that on in the background, like on our main like TV when I'm kind of doing something else or doing some task or something. I can just not focus on the screen, but I can have it on in the background, and she'll be doing the same. And then she's kind of got to know the people that are on it. And I'm like, oh, you know, that guy, you know, the main guy there, Rich, he wrote some of the magazines I used to get in like the 90s. And he was like, really? He's that old? I was like, yeah. And I got an issue of, I think it was Sega magazine from 1993.
I think he was really quite young then.
Oh, he would have been in his 20s. Yeah, probably his early 20s.
Yeah.
But I showed her, and he had little pictures of all the people that worked on this magazine. She's like, oh my God, yeah, that's him. And obviously, you know, Sega Saturn magazine was probably the big one for me personally that he was on. But he obviously did CNVG and a bunch of others. But so yeah, it's a bit of a legend, and it's the people that work with him probably aren't that. None of that stuff would really have registered for them, because they'll think couple of Canadians, and I think there's obviously John, who we've had on the show, John Linneman, who's a bit of a legend. He's American, living in Germany. You've got Alex, who I don't actually know if he's American. He sounds American, but he lives in Germany.
Alex, I think he's German.
Yeah, he's just got a very English and an American accent.
Yeah.
And like kids that kind of go to international school, they all sort of end up sounding American, even though they're not from there at all.
I think you find a lot of I know Europeans, because they grew up with American films and things like that, so they pick up that kind of accent. But
it's funny actually. It's kind of a random thing, but talking about people being exposed to like American sort of shows and stuff as kids, I was chatting to a guy at work who was he's someone that moved here from Scandinavia, and he was talking. We had a conversation about why English people don't know other languages really, whereas other Europeans do. And I sort of and he was
they're
kind
lazy.
of an interesting discussion. Well, that is probably a factor, yeah. But it's also like he was telling me his childhood. He spent like watching tons of American TV because that was just what was shown. He wasn't going out of his way to watch this stuff. It was just shown by default. And often it would be subtitled. It wouldn't be dubbed like we would get things dubbed for us. And things like American wrestling, like WWF, and cartoons, and probably the same cartoons, a lot of the same cartoons that we watched, but in English. So through the subtitles and sort of that, they would he would get a degree of knowledge of English just from that on its own, from a very young age. And then at school, they would learn English, and that would just be, so they do it by osmosis, really. And I was sort of saying to him, well, it sounds weird, but for us, learning a language is actually kind of a luxury. And he was like, really? It sounds like such a weird way to put it. And I was like, well, I'll explain. And I sort of said, we get it taught to us at school, often very late. By the time we're 11 or 12, you might do a GCSE in it. And you get to a point where you might be able to drop it completely when you get to sort of, I'd sort of say to him it was fifth form and fourth form, fifth form. It was like year 10, 11, 12. You might end up dropping it completely by the time you get to 14 or 15 to do something else. So you might get a very small window of when you can learn a language. So one, you have to be enthusiastic, which you might not be, as you just said. And if you are, then you could maybe carry on and doing it. And there'll be the people that are English that do know another language, which is probably a very small proportion of us. I'm learning two languages at the moment. I'm trying to learn French and Spanish.
Are you
doing it for 4 months now? Yeah.
Oh wow!
Nothing crazy.
Well done.
Nothing crazy. I'm literally using an app to do it, but I'm planning on actually going to school and getting a course and actually trying to get better at it. So there's that, but then we don't have the surrounding things for us to naturally absorb that other language like you would have had. You being the Scandinavian chap I was chatting to. We don't. All of our TV shows, they're in our native language, so. Again, you would have to go out of your way to learn them, and to do that, you probably have to pay for a course to do it, and this will all be off your own back. So, our experience of learning a language is completely different to his.
A really interesting point, because I started owning it with. I watched a video, but a couple of weeks ago there was a video on from this German YouTuber that I watch, and he does. It's quite funny because he'll release his videos in German, then 2 weeks later he'll release the same video but in English. So of course I watch the English version. But because Germany is such a big market, that what they find is that with all the Scandinavian countries and Portugal and Eastern Europe, everything gets subtitled because it's really cheap to do. So that means that those countries have a much higher proficiency of English. But in Germany, because it's obviously German language is Germany, Austria, lots of Switzerland, and it's a more developed market. So all of the films are actually dubbed. And they showed this guy, and it was quite funny. He was a guy, with a beard, a little bit overweight, and wasn't the best looking guy in the world. You understand why exacerbating
someone that would
his
work in a
looks.
video game shop.
Probably, yeah, exactly. Look like that. Anyway, but he is the voice in Germany of Leonardo DiCaprio. So all of the Leonardo DiCaprio films there's been since, and I think the first one he did was Titanic, and now he's got the role of being the voice of Leonardo DiCaprio in Germany
for life,
so
basically.
Exactly. So when you're watching a film and you'll hear his accent, you'll go, "Oh, that's Leonardo DiCaprio," but of course it's not, because Leonardo DiCaprio, I'm sure, doesn't speak German, and he might do. And but it's this other guy whose whole career has been, I've been Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm sure he does other people as well. And I just thought that was absolutely sort of fascinating. But I'm well chuffed you're learning another language, and and close to me there's a French walking group. So the whole idea is you meet up with them once a week and you go for a walk in the park and just chat in French. Now I don't speak French, and I probably haven't got the interest to learn, but that could be sort of something, for you to find.
I'm trying.
Yeah,
a similar thing. I'm trying to. I'm understanding. I'm very, very clear. Trying to be clear to myself that it's going to be. It's very difficult. It is very frustrating. Obviously, I'm a lot older than I was when I was learning languages at school. Your brain isn't quite that sponge that it was when you were younger, especially a teenager. So it's frustrating. Things don't make sense, but it's just think of it as reps at the gym. Just like daily, I try and do at least 5 to 10 minutes of both, of learning both. French is a bit easier for me because I had a head start, having done it at school, and I've retained a decent chunk of that.
But isn't it quite difficult to learn two languages at once?
Isn't that? It's not easy. It's not. It's hard. It's definitely hard. But I don't find I've made it any harder for myself, because one, I've already I have a bit of a head start with French, so that's not a completely, brand new thing for me. And Spanish and French are quite similar, in not massively, but they are quite similar. So you don't feel like you're doing a complete head screw job when you're bouncing between the two. But ultimately, I want to migrate from using an app at the moment is just a way to get those reps in and get that initial base. I'm not expecting to be able to talk. I couldn't have a conversation with someone, absolutely not, and I would struggle to understand what someone was saying to me, because people speak very fast, but as we do. But I'm starting to understand things written, and I'm trying to do things like watching football matches in like Spanish commentary, just to get not trying really hard to know every word they're saying, but just the sounds. Just to get your brain used to the sounds and the flow and the rhythms of like a language. People say that's a good way to do it, and watch films that you're already familiar with in a different language is a good thing to do as well. Because again, you'll just sort of absorb this. But ultimately, I want to try and, they're not cheap, but I want to pay some money and have proper classes. But that'll probably be something I'll try and do next year. But it's something I've always wanted to do.
Online ones, can't you? So you just sort of sign up and then like what we're talking here, but you'll be going, Trevor, tell me about your day at school. What is your favourite cake?
I mean, it's not too far removed from what I'm doing already, so I'd rather actually, even though it's kind of more faff, I'd rather go to a class, and sit in a classroom for an hour, once a week or something for a few months, and then and do it that way. But yeah, that's something I want to do, and hopefully, in 5-10 years time, God knows where I'll be if I keep doing it daily.
No, exactly.
I'd recommend it to anybody. Done. Just get yourself whatever app you think will work for you, and 5-10 minutes a day. It's not that much out of your day. When you sat on the toilet, you can you can do a quick lesson. So
sitting on the toilet talking French.
Exactly, like French people might do. So
exactly.
Anyway,
DF Retro, what are we talking about, Trev?
Let's move away from that. So where we were getting at with Digital Foundry there. We both listen to the podcast, but there's a lot of discussion on the podcast over the last year really, of how things are progressing in terms of the console market and where things might be going. Because we're probably halfway through the current generation of consoles, I would say. I mean, it's kind of crazy when they don't seem old to me, or even they still seem new to me. Really, 2020 wasn't it when they came out? They're right at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
So they're only a sort of handful of years old, but realistically, we're probably going to get new consoles in, maybe 2 to 3 years. But, it feels like we're at a bit of a crossroads of what those are going to look like. I mean, I think we're still going to get a box that you put a disc in, well, maybe not a disc, but a box that's either branded Sony or branded Microsoft. There's going to be a new Switch as well, but we've kind of covered that we've got an entire episode of Console Shock where we discuss what the Switch 2 might look like from the past year. So I recommend you go and listen to that one if that's what you want to hear about. But in terms of the current sort of console war and how that might look in the next generation, so we're looking at the 10th generation of consoles. That'll be. I think the current one's the 9th. I mean, we've got Microsoft are kind of on the ropes and look like they're sort of softly trying to move away from being focused on getting their box, no pun intended, Xbox, their box into as many homes as they can in an effort to sell more of them than Sony. Whereas Sony are kind of, we're kind of on top. We haven't really got to rock the boat too much with how we do things. So I think they're kind of just going to coast. We've got other things like Steam Decks and things like that, which are still going to get released. We could even talk a little bit about a Steam Deck too. But what are your thoughts, Stu, on how things are at the moment and where that might take us?
Because I think, all these companies have sort of metrics that they're trying to follow.
Yeah.
And, with PlayStation, it's a very sort of traditional market. Is they want to sell machines. Sony, at the heart of them, is a hardware making company, and people want a box to sit under their TV and they can play games on. But I think Xbox have potentially, I almost want to say, a little bit ahead of the game, and they want to do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, actually.
And I was sort of thinking about this as we were talking about it today, and what to sort of some of the points. And I don't think they're fussed about selling lumps of silicon to go underneath your TV. I think they're fussed about selling Game Pass memberships. And then, do you know how you get sort of Netflix? Netflix. So you can get Netflix on your phone, on your TV. You can get it on your computer. You can watch it anywhere you go. In hotels, it's everywhere. So then I'm sort of thinking more about, if I was Xbox, actually, imagine if you go on to turn on your PlayStation 6, for example, and then one of the apps is called Xbox Game Pass. And that's just a way that you'll load that in, or then you'll have that activated, and then you can just install all of the games onto your PlayStation, and you'll play them through your subscription to Xbox. And then you can play that through streaming, which I still think is a bit rubbish. You can do that on all of the portable machines. You can play it through your PC. So all these different ways. So all Xbox will be is basically a Game Pass membership. And you'll just go, okay, I'll pay my £10 a month, or £15, or £7, whatever it is. And then I can sign in on PlayStation. I can sign in on PC. I doubt it'll ever come to Nintendo, but all different sort of systems. And then you can just, because I was sort of thinking about the Steam Deck, and a couple of weeks ago in the sale, Forza Horizon 4 was in the sale. So I thought, actually, I want to get that. That'd be a good game to play on there. Great with the controllers and things like that. So anyway, downloaded it, installed it, and then it started asking me for my MSN password and stuff. So I put all that in, and then suddenly I started getting achievements. So I was hold on, I'm getting achievements here for playing this Xbox game. So then I was thinking,
to Xbox Live,
well, all of the games that are on Game Pass, probably 90% of them are on Steam as well. So if you just loaded up Steam and then had access to you for example, your Steam account was linked to Xbox Game Pass, and then you could just download all of the Game Pass games and play them on your Steam Deck. And it was just like, my God, this is almost, I think, sort of the future of the way that gaming is going to go. And I mean, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Trev?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they kind of see that the idea of having to sell a console is kind of a mugs game now. They might not have decided that if they were winning the console war. I'm not sure Sony would really have that foresight to actually think, right, we're dropping having a box, we're going to go streaming only. I think Microsoft were always in the better position to do that, but it might not have happened to the degree that it's happening right now had they been ahead. But they're not ahead. They've been struggling against Sony. So it looks like they're still going to bring a box out. I think it might be the last time they do it, especially if they, if it doesn't really sell great, or even if it sells to a mediocre amount, they might decide that that's justification for us to not bother. When we get to the 11th generation in sort of the 2030s, I guess, whenever that will come around. But they could just see them. We'll just be we'll just be a gaming brand that isn't tied down to you buying a box that you plug into your TV. You just have our streaming services, which, you're right, aren't great. They'll get better over time. It's still early days, but probably more on the PC platform. It will just be, it's still not great really on Windows. I mean, the Windows Store is pretty crap, and the Xbox app is janky, and that needs to improve. It might be the push where Microsoft, try and make a Windows Xbox edition. So you install that. It might, there might even just be an operating system which is just Xbox. It isn't really associated with Windows. Like, this is Xbox OS. Put it on your PC, and you could run Xbox games really seamlessly, like it's a console. So I think it's evolving into that. And then obviously we've heard rumors that they're making a handheld. I think they will do that. I think probably that'll be. It'll be the equivalent of sort of the Xbox Series S, so it's not really a next generation thing, but I think they'll maybe there'll be an upgraded version of that when we get to the next generation of consoles. But potentially the handheld might not necessarily be a dedicated console. It might just be a Windows handheld that's been optimized for Xbox games.
Trev, when you're talking about the handhelds, they're on the market. You can buy one today, and it's called a Rogali or a Legion. What's it? A Legion Go or
Go.
It's there now. You can play Game Pass on these handhelds. So really, Xbox have just got to sort of take that and just make it into one sort of branded Xbox, portable, whatever it's called, and and I think that would sell amazingly well. And the other point that DF Retro or DF Direct were making, that we've actually sort of reached a saturation point of console owners in the world, and they don't seem to get sort of above 200 million, and that sort of. I was sort of thinking about another point where sort of prices of consoles, because I remember a console would come out for £299, then it would become £250 6 months later, then 9 months later it'd be £200, then 6 months later at Christmas it would get put down another £50, and before you knew it, you could buy like a brand new console for 150, 129.99, and there really were obviously quite sort of very competitively priced. And if you compare that to now, where in fact like the PlayStation, I don't think the Xbox has had one reduction in price other than for a small period of time, and then it's gone back up. And the same with the PlayStation 5. They've constantly sort of re-engineered it to make it more cost effective, but it's not had a significant price cut other than maybe 50 quid off, and then we've had it added in the game, and then the price has gone up. And in fact, Japan, the price of the consoles actually gone up because of things the price of the yen. So I think that's got a big factor to sort of for the reason why. And the console sales have not, because people are, hold on, I'm going to wait 6 months, it'll drop down in price. And that's just not happening anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you'd end up, certainly with the generations probably before, I felt like when we got to the 360 and PS3 era, they never really got to like 150, 100 pound, 150 pound. I think like the 360 at the very end, I do remember like in Argos, or with the Xbox One already out, you could get one for £150, I think, which was a great deal at the time. I remember like the 500 gig, the Xbox 360E, the one that the last revision that looked like an Xbox One kind of. Probably the best one out of all the revisions because it's the most reliable. You lose a couple of USB ports, but yeah. I mean that got probably what was the equivalent of £99, but I don't recall the PS3. I think maybe it was a couple £100 right at the end, which I guess probably if inflation is about £99 was in the 90s. When the PS1 was £100 and the N64 was £100. But the last gen, I would say, or the 8th gen consoles, I don't think they ever got super cheap. And yeah, right now, I mean, the prices have gone up and they're not going to go down probably ever. I mean, the Switch is costs as much as it did when it came out. It hasn't gone down at all. It hasn't stopped it selling very well. Maybe it could sell better. But yeah,
what's so go back to the statement of DF Direct saying that we sort of reached our limit, and when I heard that, I was very surprised because I thought, well, hold on, surely there's more and more gamers who are wanting to play on a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X or a Nintendo. I was going to say Nintendo Wii then, a Nintendo Switch. There's more people, all across the world who are, hopefully.
It seems to be the case. I think it sort of rings true because, I mean, if we break it down, I mean, like, I think the PS5 has sold like 60, 70 million or something like that. The Switch is over 100 million. So that's 200 million between those two and another 40 or 50. So you're probably saying, you might be able to hit 300 million. And in previous generations, I mean, obviously, sales would have been very low at the very beginning of video games consoles because they were more niche. But when you got to sort of the PlayStation era, PS1 era, where the first console to hit 100 million units, that's when we sort of were getting close to where we are now. And like the 360 generation, or like the PS2 generation, you had like the PS2, which blew everything away. That was 150 mil. And you had sort of Xbox and GameCube with about 50 mil between them. So yeah, 200 to 300 million seems to be the only amount you could ever sell scattered across the three of them, with normally one of those three, if there's three competing systems, and there might be two, might be four. It has varied over the decades, but we've kind of settled upon Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony now, and it's been that way for since the early 2000s, really. At this point, but yeah, it seems that it's around 300 million is probably the most you can get, and I mean that might just be the limit as to the amount of people that want to buy a console. There's probably, I mean, if you just define gamers that anyone that plays a game, whether it's a mobile game like a dual matching game on a phone, all the way up to spending all day every day on Fortnite. That's obviously way more than 300 million. There's way more people have phones, way more people have PCs, and that they play games on. But obviously, it's a certain type of person would want to buy a console and play on a console. And yeah, perhaps that does have an upper limit. So I think Microsoft just think, well, is there really much point in trying to fight over getting a box in someone's living room when we kind of need to go beyond that and expand into the other, like every Xbox is a screen, I think, isn't it? The tagline that they're kind of using.
Yeah.
Every screen is an Xbox. Yeah.
Exactly. And that kind of sort of makes sense to me now. And I still think streaming's not there, but I think a lot of people are going down the route of, I don't want to say like the third world or whatever, that's sort of the wrong term really. But I think actually around the world, a lot of people are going, oh, actually, I want to get into PC gaming because that's, and you don't have to have a £1,000 or a £4,000 Linus Tech Tips, supercomputer with a 4090 in, you can get a 1660 whatever processor or GPU, and you can get a computer for pretty reasonable these days. And then you're not, if you're not thinking, I'm gonna get 240 frames a second and I'm happy with just okay performance. Is it the because for me, I've got, and I think, a year ago, I would have had a different opinion. But now, obviously, I've talked at length about how I'm, really enjoying it. And I'd cast myself now as a PC gamer, primarily, where before I was certainly a console gamer, and I was for years. But I found with PC gaming, there's so much more, games that are available, and they tend to be, sometimes they're a bit more expensive, sometimes they're a lot cheaper, and there's the whole world of all these free games and things like that, and I think potentially I haven't got any figures to back this up. I think a lot more people are getting into sort of PC gaming than console gaming, just because actually they can do their schoolwork on there, they can do other bits and pieces, they can browse the internet, and then they can play games at the end of the day. And I think you can get
and it takes different form factors as well. Now we've got laptops, you've got handhelds.
Oh
now.
Actually, that's a great point.
The TV, and those games will just play on those other devices as well under the same. Log into Steam, download the same game you've got on your desktop, play the same game. Can't do that with a PlayStation or an Xbox. You got the PS Portal, but it's a far more limiting device. It's a really good point, because it's not an extra device that's in addition to the PC. You can I'll just do it on my PC. I've already got it. It'll be interesting to see how they can keep that distinctive Xbox identity, though, when it kind of sounds like they're really just becoming Steam. A rival to Steam. If they're just going to be a store on
I think the way that's different from Steam is where you go to buy a game and then you can own it. So Steam is like Blockbuster Video. No, actually that's wrong. Yeah. Steam is like HMV. So you go there to buy basically a game, or to buy a movie to own for life, whereas Xbox is actually it's a membership, and then there'll be like a rotating 400 or 500 different games that constantly come in, and some will leave, and then other ones
it'll be Netflix.
It'll be Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV of gaming. That's where it wants to be. And and
they'll have a box that's branded by Microsoft that you can play it on if that's what you prefer, but that'll be a small part of the whole thing. And then we've covered a lot of Microsoft, but Sony, I don't think they're going to do that much different. They obviously have branched out a little bit into PC gaming, in terms of releasing like Uncharted and Last of Us and Ratchet and Clank, and I think they'll continue to do that. It seems they're a bit more stingy with what they put on other platforms versus, Microsoft are basically just letting everything out on everything at the moment. which is great, especially for, when you've got handhelds like the Steam Deck, you can play Forza, like you're just saying, on there. You haven't got to wait for a dedicated Microsoft handheld, though I'm looking forward to that when they do release it. But Sony are being a bit more protective, and they clearly can sell 100 plus million consoles, so it's probably worth it for them. They can make money from you have to have a box, that you plug into your TV, although really consoles now are just PCs. The hardware is very similar to a PC, and it's just basically locked down to PlayStation branded discs and a PlayStation branded store. That's really all it is now. But yeah, I think they'll probably continue to just do what they're doing. They've got their streaming service, and they've got a few other little things that are kind of in that realm of what Microsoft are doing, but it's not going to become the primary, way that you'll, interact with the PlayStation ecosystem. I think that's going to continue to be a Sony branded box. They seem to still be interested in making pro versions of their consoles, which nobody else, obviously we did get that with the Xbox One X, but they're not doing another console of that kind this time around, Microsoft. But Sony are, it seems, PS5 Pro. They'll probably keep doing that, so every 3 years you'll get a slightly better version, whether it's the actual leap to the next gen or a revised version of the old one, which is all right, I didn't buy a PS5. I might get the Pro because that would make sense. It's newer and better, depending on how much it is. That's a very interesting thing. I mean, what is the PS5 at the moment? Is it still like £400?
I don't really keep track, but
it's £439.
Yeah,
£439. So you're looking at, God, what's the Pro going to be like? £600?
But I think you'll get it'll almost become a little bit more like PC gaming, and generations will go, and it might be called the PlayStation 6, the next big reiteration, but then it will and then certain games will only work on the PlayStation 6, for example.
Yeah, there'll be a breaking point. Yeah, they always have to have that breaking point. Absolutely, yeah.
Exactly. So you'll get games that will come out and you go, and it's almost like what Xbox are doing is, if it says Xbox, it'll play on an Xbox. On the Series X, anything that says, for Xbox One will play, anything that was on PS4 will play on PS5. So they might just keep that sort of going, because you're right in what you're saying. Everything is, x86 based. So it's just going to be, it's all the same, what's it called? The same lot of language behind it. The hardware behind it, it's just more powerful than the last one. So you might have a game that'll come out. We go, well, actually, this is Football Manager, 2029 or whatever. It doesn't need a lot of power, but it'll be branded as PlayStation 6, and on the back, this also plays on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 as well, and it will give you sort of those kind of options. So I think it's the generations have kind of will naturally just go, and it will just be it would almost be like, I've got the newer one that.
Well, it's not too dissimilar to the situation we've already had, I would say, though. I mean, I can't imagine. And then the Xbox One, and you buy the games for the 360, and then you upgrade to the One, and the One then went up to the Series, and the Series can play the Xbox One games and also the Series games, of course. The next one above that, if there is there is going to be another box, that'll be an Xbox, but that'll probably go back down to just the previous generation. It'll play the Series games, but also its own unique games. So you just, every time you make a jump up to the next generation, you won't be left behind with the previous one. You better play those games on the new one. That seems to be a fairly standard thing now, I would say, isn't it?
Exactly. So it's going to be like if you buy, a PC from 7 years ago, you've still got a good chance of it playing, the most up-to-date games, but they might just be at a slightly lower setting. You have to put them on, I don't know, performance mode, or the games might come out with here's a disc that says PlayStation. You put it in your machine, and you go to the options. Do you want PlayStation 6, PlayStation 5, or PlayStation 4 mode? And
yeah, exactly.
Something along those lines. And you can just sort of play them like that, and that's the way I think it's going to be. The world is going to be moving forward. I can't see, unless they're going to change go down the route of some sort of Snapdragon processors which use a different architecture, or some sort of ARM sort of Snapdragon, all sort of the same kind of thing, really. But that kind of world of chips. So if they stick with the x86, it's I just think it'll turn more and more into sort of PCs, and
the generations will flow among across each other a bit more easily than they would have done in the past, where you're really breaking everything, aren't you? It used to be when you jump to a new generation. Certainly before we got to, it started to get better with the PS2 being able to play PS1 games, but even that was, needed, including the old hardware, basically, in the new hardware. But I think, it was a kind of a quick, final overview of how I think it's going to look in the next generation. Microsoft will basically be a bit more fluid. They'll have a box that you can buy, but they're not hedging all of their bets on that being successful. It'll just be one way that you get to play Xbox games, but mostly it'll be much closer to a PC, and those games will probably work on Windows. Maybe the same disc will. I mean, if there's going to be discs, that's probably a different discussion for another time. But I think they probably will for the time being into the next generation. That disc will work on the box that you plug into your TV. Maybe that box is essentially a PC with just a Windows skin or an Xbox skin on it, on the OS. They'll have a handheld. Perhaps, when you have the disc, you unlock that code of that disc to allow you to download it to the handheld as well. They've obviously already got the online store, so you can use that on a PC. You can download, maybe that one disc will cover you for any kind of Xbox device that you want to play it on. Game Pass will be a big thing. They're not going to be too bothered about selling a console, but they're going to have a handheld as well, which is going to be great. And they'll just be, a brand essentially that takes various forms. Sony, I think will just keep doing what they're doing. I think they're going to be mainly focused on you having the box sat under your TV. I don't think that's going to change much, and that works for them. And they seem they've won basically the last two generations. They might win the next one, but what does winning that generation really look like? Is it how many subscribers you've got to your online service? Because you're not really competing against other people now that are worried about selling a box. Well, maybe Nintendo, but Microsoft have kind of taken themselves out of that arms race. So that's what is success for them going to look like. Well, I guess they'll just be like, well, if we sell 100 million units of this next console, that's probably good. I think probably the last thing just to talk about, we've obviously had this great, golden age of handhelds really now, where we've had all these great new ones that have popped up that are Windows based, and probably triggered by the Nintendo Switch really, which is kind of the first sort of console that has been able to, a handheld that has really been able to keep up with the dedicated home consoles, and that spawned the Steam Deck and the Go and the Rogali. What do you see happening in that realm? I mean, I don't really mean the Switch, but a Steam Deck 2 or anything beyond that, or see Microsoft coming in with a handheld.
Yeah.
What thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked in the past how I think it's almost like a third way of playing PC games. It's basically you'll play it on your desktop, you'll play it on your laptop, and then you'll play it in your handheld. And I just think that's going to have a huge growth of we've seen it so far, haven't we? The Steam Deck came out, then 1,000,001. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but lots of other machines have come out, and Trev, you probably brought all of them, and have sort of come out, and so I think that's only going to continue, and they're almost going to become sort of better and better, and you'll get ones that are And I think it'd be quite interesting because you'll get ones that will be like over £1,000, and then we go, this one's really focused on, huge power and getting the most frame rates. And then you'll get other ones coming out that will be, this one's $299. The battery lasts, 6 hours, and it's great for, playing emulators, playing competitive games, playing. If 30 frames a second is what you're looking for. So I think that's going to become a huge sort of growth market for sort of the video game industry. And then the Xbox and as what we're talking about, the Xbox membership or Xbox Game Pass will just become an app on all of these models, and they may potentially have their own machine as well, which I would like to see, certainly. But I think that it will just become part of, all of these machines will just be preloaded with Game Pass. Put your password in, start downloading your games, and away you go. And I think that's going to be sort of the future, really. And these handhelds is going to grow and grow.
Yeah, I'm pretty much, exactly what your thoughts are. I'm on board with that. I think with specifically the Steam Deck, I think there's definitely going to be another one. It's the first Steam Deck has been a huge success. I think there's going to be a Steam Deck 2. I don't think they'll be too much different. Obviously, they'll be more powerful. It'll probably be more closer to like a PS5 and an Xbox Series X in terms of the power that it has. So it'll be able to handle some of those current gen games much closer to how they run on those systems. That might mean, again, when the next gen comes out, that 10th generation, it'll be kind of be on that cusp there where it'll be able to run those games, but probably at the lowest settings, and some it might not really be feasible on, which is kind of where we're at with the current Steam Deck. There are some games that just push it too far, but I think most you can realistically run, 30 frames a second, low graphics details, which, on a smaller screen, handheld is pretty decent. We've both got Steam Decks. We know what that's like. It's still very enjoyable. I would like them to expand a little bit, though, and maybe we'll get like a Steam box, a Steam Deck box, which will basically be probably not nearly identical hardware to the handheld, but allow a greater power input, like a higher what's it called, TDP thermal profile. So instead of whereas a Steam Deck maxes out, let's say, at sort of 15 watts that it can actually use, which is always going to limit the frame rate and the resolution and all that stuff that you can do. The box will just be absolute maximum that you can get out of a wall socket, that like a normal PC. So same kind of, probably the same CPU, same mostly the same, but you probably would get a bigger hard drive and a bit more RAM, and obviously it can just suck up more power from the wall outlet, so you can probably match the kind of graphics that you'll get on that next generation. But the great thing is it will be able to play, and anything that a Steam Deck could play. So you could talk about going back decades, really. Anything that's able to run on the Steam Deck, which would be a great thing, a great selling point of because some people don't want a handheld, and some people would want to buy the Steam Deck just to connect it to the TV. They probably would buy a box that would plug into the TV. It'll be that nice middle ground between getting a humongous gaming PC or a console. You've kind of got a Steam box would fulfill that ease of use that you get with a console, but access to the humongous Steam, PC library, and being able to, put Windows on it, I guess, and install other applications.
I don't understand how that hasn't been done already, because, people, they'll put their Steam Decks into monitors or into the TV, and they'll have it sitting there like a Switch. And if the Steam Deck, what's it, £350, £400? So without the controllers, without having a battery in it, without having the screen on it, it could be £150 machine that can play games, really, really well. Put it on, set it at a maximum 1080p, and it would just be a brilliant little piece of kit to, exactly as you said, to, you know, sit under your TV, and gets everyone into, you know, the PC ecosphere, the Steam world, and yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, I don't think, I can't see them making like literally like the PS TV, which was basically a Vita without the screen, wasn't it? That just connected to the TV and just played Vita games. I don't think that's a very compelling device, because if they literally just played made a screenless Steam Deck that was exclusively for the TV, I mean, you're kind of not really gaining much over just buying a Steam Deck and just keeping it plugged into your TV. At least you've got the option to take it away from the screen. I think if they did make a box for the TV, I think it would have some advantage over the handheld, and that would be just power. Probably wouldn't be that much more expensive. Probably be about £500.
Surely it'd be cheaper, wouldn't it? Surely
it could be. Yeah, it could be. I mean, obviously, with a handheld, the miniaturization of things just naturally makes it more expensive, doesn't it? And the screen, and but if it does have beefier hardware, obviously that would offset that a little bit. So it could be the same price. Actually, it might just be in the same price, or it might be a tiny bit more. Steambox Pro, whatever they end up calling it. But I would like to see that, and I think they probably will do that. And you'll just have the desktop, you know, Steam Deck and the handheld Steam Deck, and people get, you know, whichever one they want, or both, you know, if they want to do that. So that's probably where I see that. And there'll be more handhelds from Iron Neo, and there'll be updated Asus handhelds and Lenovo, and that'll be an ongoing thing, I think, from this point on. And hopefully Microsoft will have a great, you know, Xbox Series handheld, which, you know, probably the next year, which will be very interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of our predictions for what's going to happen in the 10th generation. But yeah, Stu, where can you find us on the internet?
Oh, search everywhere, search Console Shock. So we've got our own website, consoleshock.net. You can find us on all podcast clients, search Console Shock. You can find us on YouTube, again, search Console Shock. And then we're on Twitter, Facebook, search Console Shock, and you'll find us on there.
You certainly can find us on there. Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening to the latest episode of Console Shock. Take care, and we will see you later.
Laters.